Welcome back to our all-new head-to-head series where we pit off the biggest clubs in football history against each other in fantasy matchups like you've never seen before. Just tuning in, you've missed some amazing clashes. City United treble winners, Pep versus Klopp, and there's many more to come, including today's AC Milan against Bayern Munich matchup. The Champions League and the European Cup before that have thrown up some of the biggest surprises in football history, especially when it comes to finals. Did you know that in the history of the European Cup, Steaua Bucharest defeated Barcelona, Celtic defeated Inter Milan, and Aston Villa beat Bayern Munich? All in finals too. No, it's not a FIFA career mode. These upsets all happened. What do you think is the biggest European final upset of all time? In today's head-to-head, we thought it would be fun to match up two victims of the greatest upsets of the 21st century. Step up the AC Milan of 05 and the Bayern Munich of 2012. These two stunning teams, sprinkled with superstars, managed to lose finals that they were favourites for. But what if they came up in a final of their own? What if they even battled it out against each other during a league season? Despite being a joy to watch and seemingly being on the cusp of European glory, these two sides went down as silver medal winners, in the years in question anyway. But when you look at their team sheets, you see why both results were such grand upsets. AC Milan were infamously 3-0 up against Liverpool after the first half of their 2005 final. It looked like the hot favourites were romping their way to the trophy. Many had predicted a mismatch in the final, and on the pitch, the teams were night and day. What happened in the second half though was nothing short of a miracle, as the Liverpool side, far from their greatest ever, managed to score 3 goals in 6 second half minutes, holding on in extra time to take the game to penalties. Momentum was on the side of the Reds, and they secured a shootout win in what is certainly the most dramatic Champions League final in modern history, and perhaps of all time. 7 years later in 2012, something rare happened. One of the finalists were lucky enough to be playing the game in their own stadium, Bayern Munich. Now, when has that happened before? Well, back in 1957, Real Madrid were lucky enough to play their final against Fiorentina in the Santiago Bernabeu. They won 2-0. In 1965, Inter Milan had the pleasure of taking on Benfica in the San Siro, and they won that final 1-0. It all seems like great omens for the lucky hosts, up until 1984, when Roma hosted Liverpool at home in the final. The game finished 1-1 and went to penalties. It was Liverpool who would win the shootout 4-2, putting an end to home victors in the finals, and Roma, by the way, still haven't won the European Cup. But perhaps more shockingly, this exact script was repeated in 2012. Bayern Munich had what should be the joy of hosting the European Cup final on their own turf, and despite welcoming a strong Chelsea side, they were undoubtedly the favourites. Chelsea had seen some turbulent times domestically and were perhaps lucky to squeeze past Barcelona in the semis. The final was 1-1 on the night thanks to a last-gasp Didier Drogba equaliser. Like Roma, Bayern Munich would lose a shootout in their home final, so both Milan and Munich faced some of the most excruciatingly painful European Cup final defeats. However, they may be two of the strongest sides to have ever lost the final. Bayern won the European Cup final the following year, and Milan took 2 years to get their title back, beating Liverpool in a rematch of 2005 in 2007. To be fair to these two great teams, not many losers come back from final defeats to win the trophy in the seasons afterwards. In 2012, Bayern Munich topped the group of death against Napoli, Man City and Villarreal. They had to see off Real Madrid in the semi-finals after smashing Basel and Marseille in the other knockout rounds. In 05, Milan beat Barcelona to top their group and got past Manchester United and Inter Milan in the knockout rounds without conceding a single goal. These are special teams, but how would they face off against each other? Both of these sides are led by World Cup winners. On the Milan side, the Brazilians like Dida and Cafu, Italians like Pirlo and Gattuso, and on the Munich team the likes of Neuer, Lahm, Kroos and Müller. Where could these teams have weaknesses, if at all? On the days these teams lost their respective finals, they let themselves down, and their weakness was probably mental, mixed with a bit of bad luck. Milan certainly got complacent. 3-0 up against Liverpool in Istanbul, they might have thought the game was won, and it should have been. Whereas Munich perhaps felt the weight of expectation playing the final in front of their home crowd. You might have backed them to shrug off such pressure, being the expert game winners that they are. But on the night, they seemed to crack a little. And of course, for both sides, when it ends in a penalty shootout, it's anyone's game. Both teams were in their prime when they lost these finals. That's why it's so shocking. When Milan lost in Istanbul, Andriy Shevchenko was the most deadly striker on the planet, but it simply wasn't his day in front of goal. Maldini and Nesta were certainly coming to the end of their careers, but they never relied on much pace, and write off those players at your peril. On the other hand, Munich perhaps could look at their defence, especially on the left side, if they were to take retrospective action. Diego Contento started the game at left back, a man who wasn't a stalwart over the years for Bayern, alongside left-sided centre-back, the veteran Anton Lee Timoshuk. Drogba would have been licking his lips at facing these guys in the air, and it was the dynamo Didier that popped up with the powerful late header to bring Chelsea level. We have AC Milan winning this one. Why is that? We think this AC Milan side was on the receiving end of a Liverpool miracle in Istanbul for sure, but in that era they were still the best club side in Europe. Let's not forget they also won the Champions League before and after losing that final. They defeated Juventus in the final in 2003 and then defeated Liverpool in 2007. They were one miracle away from a very impressive dynasty, but the football gods chose it wasn't to be. Bayern Munich were a fabulous team too, but they didn't quite have the same success as this Milan side in finals. During the 4-year period between 2010 and 2013, Bayern reached 3 finals, but lost 2 of them. They were defeated by Inter in 2010 before the Chelsea defeat. Then, they finally got their hands on the trophy in 23, inspired by the likes of Arjen Robben and Mario Mandzukic against Borussia Dortmund at Wembley. But Milan take it. Domestically, a Bayern Munich side that have since dominated German football, like they did so before, were hounded by Jurgen Klopp's Dortmund in 2011 and 2012, when the Yellow Wall men won back-to-back titles. But Bayern won in 2010, and then from 2013 onwards, every single year. However, during Milan's mid-2000s period, they could only manage 1 Scudetto title, in 2004, with Juventus and Inter completely outshining them domestically during that decade. With this in mind, we have to say, Bayern would take Milan in a league campaign. History suggests so. Do you agree? Let us know your thoughts on these two great sides in the comments. Are they the best losers of a European Cup final this century? What does that matter? Who shall we compare and contrast next? Stay tuned for more.